Figures have shown that, I think you mentioned a bit earlier, through the 20th century, Scotland has traditionally been a net, if you like, exporter of people to the rest of the UK, to the rest of the world. It's almost, become part of our culture, if you like. But I think it was round about the millennium when that sort of reversed.
Yeah.
Both in regard to the rest of the UK and the wider world. So I just really wondered if you had any thoughts about what factors played a role in sort of reversing that, and I suppose what more can be done to encourage it, given the sorts of pressures you've outlined. Not that it can ever be the answer, but
Yeah.
a small perhaps part of the answer.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Scotland. Michael Anderson, colleague at Edinburgh University, done brilliant work on Scotland's population over the years, and he's got some brilliant facts about how Scotland was one of the very few countries, if the only country in Western Europe that didn't have growth in its population through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we were exporting people, and that's one of the legacies that we face. That's the reason why we're aging earlier, is because of this bulge. The baby boomers are just going through the system, but there's fewer people coming behind because we had that out migration, and that's what's one of the big legacy effects. And then you're right, the accession countries and the growth in the early 2000s has led to that turnaround, and also migration from the rest of the UK, I think, is important. It's not always been at the working age population, but we have seen increased migration from the rest of the UK coming in to do that. And a couple of caveats I would say about that. So the first thing is that migration can certainly help, and I don't want to kind of leave the impression that migration isn't potentially a really positive thing for the Scottish economy, particularly in sectors, particularly helping to tackle some of the fiscal issues, etc. over time. I said there is this quirk in the system that because it's all about our tax performance per head, we don't get the automatic benefit of bigger population than you might do if you were under a different fiscal arrangement. And also as well, we're still talking about relatively small numbers. So we're still talking about 20,000 net positive international migration for Scotland each year. That's against a population of nearly 5.5 million. So it can impact the growth rates at the margin, but it's not going to fundamentally change the stock of our population unless we had migration on a scale that we've never really seen before. Ultimately, what attracts migrants is it's pretty simple, and it's pretty well evidenced, which is high quality jobs, good public services, there's not really much more than that, because it comes down to, have you got a job, have you got a house, are you getting good public services, and that's the thing that attracts good migrants.